accused of stealing millions of dollars from the federal government so he could live in the lap of luxury. Tonight, he is back behind bars after fleeing the country. Glad you're with us. I'm Ginger Gadsden.
And I'm at Austin News 6's Lauren Cervantes has the latest on the investigation from Seminole County.
45-year-old Don Cisternino is now back in Central Florida after authorities brought him back from Croatia to face a list of charges. Now, the federal government says he lied to get millions of dollars in COVID relief and spent it on a life of luxury, including this mansion in Seminole County. Don Cisternino is facing charges of wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and illegal money transactions, according to a release put out by United States Attorney Roger Hanberg. According to the Department of Justice, Cisternino lied to get over $7 million from the Paycheck Protection Program for his New York-based business called Magnifico. The department says Cisternino claimed he had over 400 employees to take care of, but in reality, had few, if any, other than himself and his girlfriend. Once Cisternino got the loan, attorneys say he used it to buy this mansion in Seminole County, along with a Lincoln Navigator we saw sitting in the driveway, a Maserati, and a Mercedes-Benz. Court documents say the owners of this home are Cisternino and Lori Kwaski, and that prior to moving here, they lived together in an apartment in Bradenton. In a statement, Hamburg said, quote, "Our successful extradition of this defendant from Croatia back to Orlando shows that we and our law enforcement partners will pursue every lawful avenue to locate and prosecute those engaged in such fraud." According to Hamburg, this case is being investigated by the IRS Criminal Investigation Tampa Field Office.
Stories in our state in a while. It's a case that stretches back more than 2 years. But finally today, we get a look behind the scenes of what is being called the largest pandemic fraud in United States history. A former employee of Feeding Our Future told a jury today exactly how the alleged $250 million scam actually worked. Lou Raguse was in court to hear about it. Lou, what'd you find out?
Jana, Hadith Ahmed says back in 2022, when the FBI laid out the paper trail in front of him of all the evidence of his crimes, he agreed to plead guilty and help prosecutors take down other defendants.
Why did you participate in the federal food program? Assistant U.S. Attorney Harry Jacobs asked Hadith Ahmed on the witness stand. I wanted to get rich to make money, Ahmed answered very early in his testimony, establishing clearly that the Feeding Our Future employee was taking part in a scam that he claims involved many, many others. Ahmed was the first defendant to plead guilty in the $250 million Feeding Our Future meal fraud case back in October 2022. Now he's the star witness for federal prosecutors, as he agreed to explain how the fraud was carried out and the connections he allegedly had to the 7 defendants currently on trial. Ahmed testified that he created a fake company called Southwest Metro Youth in Eden Prairie to run phony meal sites. At the same time, he worked for Feeding Our Future, the nonprofit that was supposed to provide oversight. Here's a $300,000 check he received, part of the $1 million he admits stealing by pretending to serve meals. Quote, the benefit is I was paid by Feeding Our Future and also getting money from Southwest Metro Youth. No site supervisor would go to Southwest because I was the right hand to Amy Bach. Although she's not on trial yet, a lot of Ahmed's testimony centered on Amy Bach, the former executive director of Feeding Our Future. Ahmed testified that he and Bach discussed the obviously fake names of children other sites claim to be feeding, and that he and Bach decided to look the other way because more meal sites equaled more money for them. He described Feeding Our Future as a bank where the scammers could withdraw money, and those who provided kickbacks would receive VIP treatment, including several of the defendants on trial, like the owners of Empire Cuisine in Shakopee. Here's a check Ahmed testified they wrote to his fake consulting company, part of the additional $1 million he says he received in kickbacks. Another defendant claimed to serve meals at Dar El Farouk Mosque in Bloomington, with phony invoices to go along with it, approved by Ahmed. The VIP treatment consisted of making sure their invoices went to the top of Bach's desk for payment and that no one would go check on their meal sites, Ahmed testified. At the end of his testimony, the prosecutor asked, how do you feel about what you did? And Ahmed answered, ashamed.
Cross-examination was just getting underway when court ended for the day, so Hadith Ahmed will likely spend tomorrow on the witness stand as well. And even though he's helping prosecutors, he still faces up to 4 years in prison when he's sentenced for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Jana.
Lou, you and I both know cross-examination can tell a very different story. Is that what you expect to happen tomorrow?
It seems like what they're going to try to do is show that he's working on a deal with prosecutors and he's willing to say anything in order to get a good deal. And the defense is going to try to make the jury get the impression that he's exaggerating or lying about what the defendants did for their role in it.
Mobile woman who admitted to defrauding the Paycheck Protection Program is going to do jail time. A judge today sentencing Sandy Riggins to 6 months, followed by 9 months of home confinement. The judge also ordering her to pay back more than $41,000. Riggins admitted to filing a fraudulent application under the Pandemic Relief Program on a non-existent business. She also admitted someone else paid her $3,500 to help them file a bogus application for a taxi service that didn't exist.
Charged with fraudulently obtaining COVID relief loans, made his first appearance today in federal court. Indictment says Valesky Barossi applied for more than $4 million in PPP loans using falsified information. Barossi and his accomplices allegedly collected more than $2 million in the scheme. He faces up to 132 years in prison.
Hearing of this Congress, the House Oversight Committee is taking aim at federal COVID spending, figuring out how much was lost to waste, fraud, and abuse.
Tia Ewing is in Studio 32 with details. Tia?
Anthony and Natalie, let's just say there was a lot of fraud going on. That is for sure. Congress, under the Trump and Biden administrations, greenlit about $5 trillion in response to the coronavirus pandemic. The relief measures helped keep many businesses afloat, but because it was so much spending, it gave fraudsters an opportunity to really cash in. The federal watchdog overseeing aid says roughly $5.4 billion may have been paid out to more than 69,000 applicants with potentially invalid Social Security numbers. Now, here in the city of Chicago, we know at least 16 Chicago Housing Authority employees were fired for allegedly collecting loans that they were not qualified for. And over in Joliet, a man wanted for a 2018 shooting in Romeoville is now facing felony charges for PPP fraud for money he received while he was actually behind bars. Now, nationwide, more than 1,000 people have pled guilty or have been convicted of defrauding COVID relief programs.
PPP loans issued as quickly as possible at the outset of the pandemic, based solely on an applicant's self-certification of eligibility, resulted in substantial fraud.
We owe it to the American people to get to the bottom of the greatest theft of American taxpayer dollars in history.
The Department of Justice has had an eye on pandemic abuse since the start of the PPP help, but Republicans argue there has been a complete failure of accountability.
Well, this story sounds like it's a wild Hollywood screenplay. A man from Marblehead who says he's a Christian monk and runs a microbrewery is now facing federal charges because prosecutors say he stole millions in COVID funds. WBZ's Chris Tanaka joins us now. Chris, his lawyer is also charged in the case.
Absolutely, David. Both of the suspects, 47-year-old Brian Andrew Bushel and 64-year-old Tracy Stockton, appeared in federal court this afternoon. Now, they're facing charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and unlawful money transactions. So here's the real-life script. Earlier today, our camera was in Marblehead as the FBI raided 3 properties. We saw them removing numerous items. Prosecutors say Bushel lied about the expenses and employees he had at a charity, a monastic house, and other organizations. Now, his attorney is accused of helping in this. Investigators say they received more than $3.5 million in COVID relief funds and spent that money on expensive wine, property, renovations, and more. And oh, by the way, this case was investigated by the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee Fraud Task Force. That's a mouthful. It was set up to detect fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement of more than $5 trillion authorized for those COVID funds.